right. So, because we have been fire hosed with a bunch of shit in Trump world, there we go, in Trump world. So let's talk about something happy, or at least happier, because it could still turn to crap. But Kansas governor vetoes ban on gender-affirming care for trans youth. And of course, overrides are still possible, so let's hope. Now, apparently the Republicans tried last time and failed, so hopefully this will happen the same. It's possible that there might be some Republicans who might grow a spine only after, or I don't know. I don't know what was the reasoning why the veto didn't get overridden last time, but hopefully it happens again. But let's get to the article. Kansas's Democratic Governor Laura Kelly has vetoed a bill banning gender-affirming care for transgender minors. Her state's Republican-led legislature will try to override her veto, but it's unclear whether they'll succeed since they failed to override her veto on a similar bill last May. Of course, now there's a different makeup of legislators. So, Senate Bill 63 would prohibit, at least I think there is in the U.S., so I assume that whatever changes happened, also Kansas is in their new legislative session. Senate Bill 63 would prohibit healthcare providers from rendering gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, and encouragement to socially transition through pronouns and clothing, even though such care is considered safe, effective, and essential by most major medical associations. But, as I've mentioned many times before on this channel, a lot of people seem to think they know a hell of a lot more about biology than actual biologists. So, yeah. Yeah, why should we listen to all these medical associations? We should listen to the people who got their PhD from a Cracker Jack box. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons this is messed up. I think I've done it before. Actually, you know what? Let's go for it. Okay, puberty blockers. Nobody had a problem with freaking puberty blockers until trans kids started using them. There were kids who went through puberty way too early and couldn't handle it because, well, it's too early. So they put them on puberty blockers. Nobody said a beep about that. But now they're having a problem with puberty blockers. And it's great for those of you who've done your own research and has decided that, oh, I don't like this side effect or this potential side effect or whatever. Great. Then don't take puberty blockers. You don't get to say because something could, and it's bizarre to me that they always say, but it could render them infertile. So could transitioning in general. What's your point? But this idea that the only thing that should be on their minds is making babies. I mean, there are ways around that, first off. I mean, they could freeze their eggs, they could donate sperm, so when they transition, there's still a potential there to have babies. But just this idea that because babies are so important to you and having children is so important to you that You assume everybody that's foremost on their mind is having kids. Not everybody does that. Actually, some people never want kids. Some people, after a year or two of marriage, may decide they want kids. Some people may decide they want kids immediately. Everybody's different, so why are we so hung up on whether someone's able to produce children? Especially since we're in a situation where the orphanages are overrun, the foster care system sucks. I just don't understand why people are so demanding that people don't know and will never know must have babies. That's just the most bizarre thing to me. And again, doctors aren't idiots. They understand the potential side effects. They discuss it with their patients. You aren't in the freaking doctor's office. You do not know what the doctor is telling a patient. Are there some doctors who are dumb as fuck and you wonder how they managed to get their license? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that because there are some horrible doctors that there are no good ones. I will bet each and every one of these people who are screaming about how they know better than doctors who've studied this are the same ones who go to the freaking doctor. I mean, I just do not understand how you can go to the doctor but then shit on the profession. Then don't go. I just don't see, I just don't understand it. Hormone replacement therapy, which again, you have to be pretty bad. Your dysphoria has to be really bad before they put you on hormone replacement therapy as a minor. That's something that normally only happens once you reach 18. And encouragement to socially transition through pronouns and clothing. Okay, that is the bare minimum for people who want to transition. I mean, maybe they'll change their pronouns. Maybe they'll start dressing more like the opposite gender. And maybe they'll realize that whatever it was they were feeling, maybe they don't like being referred to as the opposite gender. Or maybe they realize that whatever was bugging them was just simply because of the way they dressed. And now that they're free to dress the way they are, they're fine. And that's the absolute extent they need to go. For other people, it could just be a stepping stone to starting to feel normal. And that they need to go through more help. But they can survive until they can start getting hormones. That they only need puberty blockers. And that's the extent of it. Everyone's transition story is different. But socially transitioning, that, like I mentioned before, that enters gender roles territory. And because it enters gender roles territory, there could be people who have a problem with the fact that there are women and girls who wear pants. There might be people who have a problem with women who have short hair. And I don't mean short hair like mine. I mean like short hair that, whether it be a pixie cut or something more along the lines of what Rachel Maddow has, and assume that these people must be trans because of it. I mean, yeah, there's going to be idiots out there who don't understand that there are women and girls who like to wear their hair a certain way, like to dress a certain way, that doesn't necessarily conform to what you think of when you think of as a girl. Same thing with boys. Just because they dress a certain way doesn't mean they're trying to transition. they might just like dressing a certain way. I mean, they might be future drag queens. Same thing with girls. They might be future drag kings. Or maybe they just happen to like looking that way for now and leave them the hell alone. But if you discourage social transition, they're not going to know if what they're feeling is just we need to change our hairstyle or we need to change our clothes or if it's something more there. So social transition is very beneficial because that can be still the experimental phase. Is this something that I need, that this is affirming and I want to go further, or this is affirming, but this is how as far as I want to go. I'm not necessarily into the pronouns, but I like that I can dress this way now. And that's the extent of it. And it turns out they're not trans. They just were afraid to dress the way they wanted to, or wear their hair the way they want to, or whatever it is. But that is important for experimentation. And so it should be encouraged. Just like we encourage a lot of other things for that age. We want kids to experiment. We want kids to figure out who they are. So by the time they're adults, they have a pretty good idea of the kind of person they want to be. So that should be encouraged. This idea of it shouldn't be, that nobody should, especially healthcare providers, shouldn't encourage that. Why not? If what you're saying is true, that about trans people, that they just want to play dress up, well then, okay, then that's the stage that they're at. They just want to play dress up. And for some people, that's all they need, is to dress a certain way. But for others, it turns out it's more than that. They should be allowed to experiment. And I don't know why we are discouraging experimentation. It makes me wonder if these people regret that they didn't get to dress a certain way or act a certain way, and now they're deciding that nobody else should be allowed to, because if we were miserable, you get to be miserable. I honestly do not understand why social transition scares people. I can kind of sort of understand the medical transition, because people seem to think that because they would never do something like put hormones in their body that that they don't think belong there, or having some type of surgery to add or remove body parts. I can see them thinking, okay, I just do not understand that because I would never do that. But social transition? Okay, that just means that people dress different. And yes, they could ask to use the pronouns of the opposite gender. Okay? At this point, it's literally no different than playing make-believe. Now, obviously, being trans is much more than that. I understand that. I am not saying that's what trans people are doing. But that's literally the stage we're at. It's how would you react to my being a boy or my being a girl, whatever it is, and using those pronouns, and how do people react to me as that opposite gender, and do I like the way I'm being treated? Do I like the way it feels? Does this feel right? Okay, great. Nothing now, if Now it could get, like I said, it could get worse. It could turn into, well, I like how this feels, but I don't like how that feels, so maybe I'm not trans. And you just happen to like dressing more like a boy or dressing more like a girl. Okay, what, why should we discourage that? We should discourage people to want to feel comfortable in their own skin. Anyway, moving on. The bill would force trans minors receiving such care to detransition because, nothing could possibly go wrong with that. It would also deny state funding to doctors and hospitals that provide gender affirming care and threaten to revoke the medical licenses of professionals who offer such care under the charges of professional incompetency. Right, because a bunch of lawyers who've never taken the MCAT, let alone practiced medicine, understands what professional incompetency is. Yeah, let's do that. Unprofessional conduct and false advertising. Huh? I don't understand that last one. Additionally, the bill would allow patients and the parents of kids who have received such care to sue doctors who provided up to 10 years after the patients turn 18. So up until they turn 28, is that what I'm reading? So this isn't just about kids transitioning. You don't like adults either. What is going on here? And I don't understand the false advertising. What's false under it? That they're becoming the opposite gender? I mean, I understand that a lot of transphobes seem to think that trans people don't understand biological sex and that those who are allies to trans people are trying to erase biological sex. But the only people doing that who are making a mockery of biological sex are the transphobes. Because trans people know that they cannot change their biological sex. And like I pointed out before, intersex people exist. Explain to me how you can acknowledge intersex people exist, but then claim that you're either one sex or the other. Yes, intersex people generally choose what sex they are. But you know what? A lot of them, especially, I don't know when they stopped doing this, but it used to be that the parents had to get to pick what sex they wanted their kids. Say they were born with both a penis and a vagina. Okay, I'm going to choose this one for my kid. Turns out they chose wrong. So now the kid has to transition to the opposite gender. Okay. They were born with genitalia of both sexes. Just because their parents chose wrong, you're going to look down on them for realizing that their parents chose wrong and now they are suffering the consequences. I just do not understand. Do you people even think the next step? It's not like this is about you. I understand that you don't want to think about all the facts, all the fact that biological sex isn't clean-cut categories, but fine, don't think about it. Don't put your discomfort onto other people. And that parents of kids who have received such care can sue. Now, if you're in an environment where you're surrounded by transphobes, of course the kid is going to sue because they're going to realize that the environment they're in isn't conducive to being oh, what's the word? To being to accepting to being accepting of you as a trans person. Of course you're going to want to detransition because you don't, it's not because you're not trans, it's because it would just be easier for people to see you in the facade they think you're supposed to be, rather than being comfortable in your own skin, because it's just not worth it. That you'll, once you're more you can move away and have a more accepting environment, that you'll try again. So maybe those parents will encourage their kids to sue. Or what if you're a parent, say one parent is perfectly okay with the fact that the kid transitioned because they see the hell that they've been going through, but another parent just can't accept it. Whether it be that they still are married or a divorced parent. And they can sue a doctor simply because they can't handle that their kid is trans. They would rather have a dead kid than one who is trans. That is super shitty. And then, of course, there's the fact that there are some doctors who, like I've mentioned, just do a crappy job of helping trans people. There are perfectly good, legit reasons to sue a doctor. Suing them because you don't believe trans people exist, not one of them. It is not the job of politicians to stand between a parent and a child who needs medical care of any kind, Kelly said in a Tuesday statement. Infringing on parental rights is not appropriate, nor is it a Kansas value. Exactly. And that's what I keep saying. It's one thing to be in the situation and decide for yourself that, I'm going to wait till I'm 18 before I do anything, or I'm going to wait till I get out of this godforsaken town because nobody would understand. There are a lot of reasons to delay treatment. But that should be your decision. That shouldn't be the decision of some politician who has no idea who you are. Even parents should have a say for the most part. Unfortunately, there are too many parents who, are anti-trans. There have been stories about parents who were anti-trans until it turns out their kids were trans, and they would rather let go of that hate than let go of their child. They wanted their child to be healthy, happy. Granted, that's why Republicans bug me so much. They can only express empathy when it affects them, but at least they changed their tune. Well, okay, so they changed their tune, and now they're accepting of at least their trans kid, if not trans people in general. So, I just, there's so many reasons for a kid to not feel comfortable, but, and there are reasons, so they might change their tune, take their kid to the doctor, and start them with social transition, or they probably are doing that already, just not in front of the parent because they're scared. but they might take them to the doctor and get a plan in place. Um, Obviously we're talking about minors, so there probably would be only talk of possibly puberty blockers depending on how old the kid is. There could be talk about, depending on how dysphoric they are, there could be talk about hormones. But that's but unfortunately not all parents are like that. So that's why I'm hesitant to say that it should be up to the parent and child, because not all parents are understanding. But, that's still something that should be within the family and for the kid to decide whether they can feel comfortable in front of their parents, and still not some politician who has no clue who these people are. The legislation will also drive families, businesses, and healthcare workers out of our state. Stifling our economy and exacerbating our workforce shortage issue, she added. It is disappointing that the legislature continues to push for government interference in Kansans' private medical decisions instead of focusing on issues that improve all Kansans' lives. Simple, because they don't know how to improve their lives. That's been the Republican brand for a long time now. Once upon a time, they actually had ideas. You might have disagreed with their ideas, but they had ideas. Now, their only idea is grievance. But, of course, it's going to drive families out of Kansas. We saw this in the military about what would happen if healthcare for trans kids was taken away. Granted, it probably isn't a lot of families, but there are military families who would be like, if I had to choose between the military and my kid, I'm choosing my kid. So I would leave the military because I want them to have the health care they need. Same thing here. Families will have to decide what's more important, my trans kid or living in Kansas and whatever business that they own or work at or whatever. And a lot of people will decide that they'd rather find a job elsewhere, move elsewhere, because they would much rather, go somewhere maybe close but less to ideal than whatever their life was in Kansas, and have their kid get the health care that they need, rather than putting their kid through hell simply because they're well off in Kansas or whatever. And of course, healthcare workers, if your job is to, even if it's not for trans people, you might just feel, well, if Kansas feels like they know better than doctors for whatever medical decisions, then do I want to risk practicing medicine here? But definitely for those who work with trans people, I mean, of course they're not going to want to stay in an area where there's open season, where people are openly hating on the very job that they're doing because they're helping kids navigate this strange and scary situation of, this is how I feel. I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. What's happening to me? And so the doctors have to come out, try to figure out, is this person trans? Is this person just, like I've mentioned before in my videos, for the longest time I was not happy with the fact that I had breasts. But that had nothing to do with me being trans. I just wasn't thrilled. And I'm not going to get into the absolute hell that was my period. But that's different. Hating certain parts of your body, or the fact that you had borderline endometriosis, isn't the same as wanting to transition. There are certain parts of a person's life biologically that people aren't going to like. That's just the way it is. But that's different than I don't feel like I'm in the right body. Totally different. And it's up to a doctor to help you navigate that. And if you're basically saying, oh, yeah, we don't want you to work with kids, well, they might feel like, well, we're not wanted here. We're going to go somewhere else. Makes perfect sense. You want to go somewhere where you feel valued. The state's Republican legislative leaders have both pledged to override Kelly's veto. Kansas Senate President Ty Masterson wrote via X, "The Senate stands firmly on the side of protecting Kansas's children and will swiftly override her veto before the ink from her pen is dry." Protecting Kansas children? There are children who are going through hell because they are living a lie. Because you are forcing them to live in a body that they don't feel comfortable in. How is that protecting children? It's not. It's not protecting children. You're basically telling them that, well, it doesn't matter how you actually think about things or how you feel about things. It's about what doesn't give us the ick. And since trans people make us feel icky, well, then you can't be trans because we don't like it. That's not how this works. There is a reason that they are trans, and it's not just, as someone suggested, that, oh, because I use the word feelings, that's all there is to it. No. There is a biological basis for those feelings. It's just that it's expressed as feelings. Because that's how shit works. Anyway. Moving on. The Republicans hold a 31-9 state Senate majority and an 88-37 state House majority, giving them ample votes for the 2/3 majority to override Kelly's veto. Ew. Ew, ew, ew. However, last May, state Republicans failed to override her veto in a similar bill when 2 House Republicans who had voted for the bill refused to vote for a veto override. Well, let's see if there's any Republicans who have a spine this time. Of course, why they were willing to... Maybe they didn't vote for the initial bill. Oh, wait. It did say they voted for the bill. Why would they vote for the bill and then, I guess the governor gave them permission to have a spine? Anyway. Or maybe they realized her arguments were compelling? Don't know. At the time, Republican State Representative Susan Concanon explained, "I voted for this bill in the past due to concerns about the surgery. With further consideration, this bill is vague beyond the surgery. These decisions belong between the team of professionals and the parents. The youth need our help, not government overreach." Okay. So she was concerned about something that wasn't actually happening. I mean, again, there might be really, really bad cases of dysphoria that require it, but for the most part, it's not minors having the surgery. So she probably... Now, she says that the bill is vague beyond surgery, but I wonder if also someone didn't point out the obvious to her that kids are generally not having these surgeries, that it's You have to wait till you're at least 18. So, about 200 healthcare professionals signed an open letter to the Kansas legislature urging lawmakers to sustain the veto. It's crucial to recognize that transgender youth are not making impulsive decisions, but rather engaging in a thoughtful process with the support of their families, mental health professionals, and medical providers, the letter stated. Banning essential health care for transgender Kansans under the age of 18 removes a crucial lifeline from these individuals and places them at risk of long-term psychological harm. Exactly. I mean, it just is boggles the mind that people who claim to care about the individuals, care about children, will then do something that is diametrically opposed to that thought. It's like they learned the wrong lesson in the talking about consent. They've decided that because children are too young to consent to certain things, that they must be drooling idiots who can't consent to anything at any time. Which means they can't decide to play sports. They can't decide that they need braces. Well, they can't decide that when they break an arm that it should be mended. No matter how much pain they're in, they can't, tell mom and dad, this happened, we need to go see the doctor. They're not allowed to actually have an opinion on anything because these dipwits seem to think that children can't consent to sex equals children can't consent to anything, ever. It's just so bizarre. But anyway, hopefully the fact that 200 healthcare professionals signed a letter urging lawmakers to sustain the veto, in a rational world, that would be enough to get people to think, maybe there's something to this. But this is not the rational timeline. We do not live in a rational timeline. We live in the timeline where everybody knows better than freaking doctors when it comes to things that they don't like. When it comes to day-to-day going to the doctor, they will listen to the doctor when they tell them this, that, or the other thing, unless it's something they don't like. You should get a vaccine. You should consider that that your health is at risk if you carry this pregnancy to term. You shouldn't be trans because that gives me the ick. I mean, it's just amazing how people accept science and accept medicine as long as it tells them what they want to hear. That isn't how medicine works. That isn't how anything works. You might not like to hear something, but that doesn't make it any less true. Anyway, that is the end of that article. So hopefully that once again, the bill will be sustained. The veto will be sustained. I hope it's that way. I don't know if because of the national fight against trans people that Trump is undertaking, if that isn't going to embolden Kansas Republicans to stand their ground and continue and veto this bill, override the governor's veto. Got it. override the governor's veto, or, like I said, maybe a couple of them will once again develop a spine and, do some research. Talk to actual trans people, talk to the doctors, and actually find out how this works and what is happening. Because having some thoughts in your head as to how things happen is not the same as actually knowing it. So talk to people who actually know what they're doing, or trans people who've been through this before. The people who can actually give you facts as opposed to you feeling the ick and so it must be bad. But anyway, that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.